And you will never appease the race bullies in the WNBA because you're too popular, you're too talented, and too white.
Caitlin Clark has been nothing short of a revolution for the WNBA, hailed as a once-in-a-generation talent who single-handedly brought attention and ticket sales to a struggling league. Yet, instead of being celebrated unconditionally, Clark has faced relentless criticism, even hostility, from her peers and the media. The narrative took a dramatic turn when Megyn Kelly, a vocal supporter of fairness and merit, stepped in and dismantled the hypocrisy surrounding Clark's treatment.
Like this woman who's a superstar. She's the Michael Jordan of the WNBA. And she's become a phenom in part because the players of the WNBA can't stand her.
Kelly didn't just defend Caitlin, she called out the blatant double standards, the racial tensions in the league, and the woke media's attempts to politicize Clark's achievements. Kelly's take: the WNBA owes Caitlin Clark for its current relevance.
Thank you so much for calling attention to our sport that literally no one cares about.
While others like Angel Reese and Aja Wilson seem to focus on tearing her down, Clark continues to dominate on the court, selling out arenas and breaking records. But when Clark acknowledged her so-called white privilege and credited black players for building the league, Kelly wasn't having it. She slammed the move as unnecessary and insincere, arguing that Clark's apology played into the hands of her critics. Critics who, as Kelly put it, are more interested in identity politics than celebrating excellence.
What is she doing wrong? What more do you want from Caitlin Clark? Seriously, what more do you want from her? She's focusing on the game. She lifted her team up, got them to the playoffs, won Rookie of the Year, and then also is denouncing racial tensions when she's asked about it. I'm sorry, I don't see anything more that Caitlin Clark should have done or could have done.
What makes Kelly's defense so powerful is how she flipped the script. She compared Clark's situation to legendary athletes like Serena Williams and Tiger Woods, who broke barriers in predominantly white sports without ever apologizing for their race. Why should Caitlin Clark, a trailblazer in her own right, feel the need to diminish her accomplishments or pander to those who refuse to acknowledge her impact?
What they all had in common is that they fundamentally changed the sport and they brought casual fans into the sport to become lifelong fans of the sport. It didn't matter what the color of their skin was. That's what Tiger Woods did to golf. That's what Caitlin Clark did to the WNBA. That's the sort of excellence that should be celebrated.
Kelly's argument resonated with fans who are tired of the divisive rhetoric overshadowing the game, and it doesn't stop there. Kelly also exposed the hypocrisy of the WNBA itself, a league that relies heavily on the NBA's financial support while sidelining its brightest star. She called out the woke media's obsession with racial narratives, accusing them of prioritizing political agendas over genuine athletic achievements. In her scathing critique, Kelly made one thing clear: Caitlin Clark isn't just a player, she's a phenomenon.
So there comes the female GOAT, and these women are going from having 3,000 people in their arenas to 20,000.
And no amount of bullying or media manipulation can erase the undeniable fact that she's saving the WNBA from irrelevance. This is the moment where the truth meets the spotlight, where Caitlin Clark's story becomes bigger than basketball, and where Megyn Kelly's unapologetic defense of excellence cuts through the noise.
But they're so envious of her because she's so good and so annoyed by the fact that she's white, because we're seeing this in magazine after magazine, that they treat her like she's persona non grata.
Caitlin Clark's rise in the WNBA is nothing short of extraordinary. From her days at Iowa to her current dominance in the league, she's redefined what it means to be a game changer. Dubbed the Michael Jordan of the WNBA, Clark's unmatched skills, court vision, and scoring ability have captivated audiences nationwide. She's not just a player, she's the face of a league struggling for relevance. Road games featuring Clark are the highest selling events of the season, and her presence on the court draws millions of viewers who might otherwise ignore the WNBA. Yet despite her undeniable contributions, Clark finds herself at the center of controversy rather than universal praise. The hostility Clark faces isn't rooted in her performance. It's rooted in something far uglier. As Megyn Kelly pointed out, Clark has been subjected to racism within her own league. Some players, like Angel Reese and Aja Wilson, have reportedly targeted her because of her race, turning the court into a battleground of resentment rather than competition. Physical altercations, including an incident where Clark was scratched in the eye, highlight the toxic environment she navigates. And yet she remains unshaken, continuing to break records and dominate games while refusing to stoop to the level of her detractors.
There is nobody interesting in the WNBA past or present except for Caitlin Clark. They've all shown themselves to be sexist, racist, petty, ridiculous. Angry that a white girl has come in and dominated what could not be even approached.
What's even more shocking is how the WNBA has handled this. Instead of rallying behind its brightest star, the league seems content to let the narrative spiral out of control. Clark's ability to put butts in seats, as Kelly put it, should make her a celebrated figure. Instead, she's often left to fend off baseless accusations and physical aggression on her own. The league's silence speaks volumes, and Kelly didn't hesitate to call it out. She argued that Clark deserves acknowledgement, not just for her talent, but for the financial lifeline she provides to a struggling organization. Kelly also pointed out a glaring double standard. While Clark faces backlash for her race, other athletes who broke racial barriers in predominantly white sports, like Serena Williams and Tiger Woods, were celebrated for their excellence. They didn't apologize for their success or their skin color, and they certainly weren't expected to diminish their accomplishments to appease critics. So why is Clark being held to a different standard? Kelly's critique was sharp. The WNBA and its players need to focus on the game, not identity politics.
Caitlin Clark is becoming the best player, not because she's white, because she's that good. She's having Larry Bird impact. She's been the driving force of the hottest team in the entire league despite her record turnovers. Why? Because she's that good.
Through it all, Clark has remained a consummate professional. She lets her game do the talking, and her stats prove her dominance. Whether it's her ability to score from anywhere on the court or her knack for creating plays that leave fans in awe, Clark has set a new standard for excellence in the WNBA. And while the criticism and hostility might weigh on others, Clark uses it as fuel, proving time and again why she's the league's most valuable player. The controversy surrounding Caitlin Clark reached a boiling point when she made a public acknowledgement of white privilege, crediting black players for building the WNBA. For some, this was an attempt to bridge divides, but for many, including Megyn Kelly, it was a misstep that backfired spectacularly. Kelly didn't mince words, calling the statement insincere and unnecessary. She argued that it played directly into the hands of Clark's critics, those who have been bullying her on and off the court. Instead of silencing her detractors, it emboldened them, turning a moment of potential unity into a divisive spectacle. Kelly's frustration stemmed from the broader implications of Clark's statement. By apologizing for something she didn't control, her race, Clark inadvertently fed into a narrative that diminishes merit and excellence. Kelly compared this to hypothetical scenarios involving Serena Williams or Tiger Woods, who shattered barriers in their respective sports without ever apologizing for their race. These athletes were celebrated for their talent and perseverance, not reduced to symbols of racial politics. Kelly questioned why Clark, a transformative figure in the WNBA, should feel compelled to undermine her own accomplishments to appease a vocal minority.
Go ahead, I'm not going to let you make it seem like Caitlin Clark was averaging 5 points a game. At the time, she was still averaging 16 points a game, which was more than a lot of other guards that made the team. So don't do that. Don't make it seem like she was averaging 5 points and this was like a handout.
No, it wasn't a handout.
Look at her numbers. Look at her numbers comparable to the other guards that were on the team.
The fallout was swift and brutal. Fans who had rallied behind Clark for her resilience and brilliance felt betrayed. Social media exploded with criticism, with many accusing her of pandering to those who've shown her nothing but hostility. Kelly highlighted how this move alienated Clark's core supporters, the ones who filled arenas and tuned in to watch her redefine the game. The irony, as Kelly pointed out, is that no amount of appeasement will ever satisfy those who seek to tear her down. The critics within the league and the media aren't interested in reconciliation. They're invested in maintaining a divisive narrative, but the damage didn't stop at her fan base. Kelly argued that Clark's statement also hurt the very players she tried to uplift. By framing black athletes as the foundation of the league, Clark unintentionally came across as patronizing, as if they needed her validation to be recognized. Kelly described this as the Cinderella complex, where Clark's spotlight inadvertently cast others as the overlooked stepsisters. For black players like Angel Reese and Aja Wilson, who have openly criticized Clark, this likely added fuel to the fire, deepening the animosity.
My advice to Caitlin, kind of keep your mouth shut. because everybody is looking for you to say anything, and they're going to splice it and cut it and make it a negative thing. The one thing that I love that she's bringing to her sport, more people want to watch. More people want to tune in.
Kelly's analysis didn't just stop at the personal, it extended to the structural issues within the WNBA. She pointed out the league's reliance on the NBA for financial support, arguing that the WNBA cannot afford to sideline a star like Clark. Her talent and marketability are rare assets in a league that struggles to attract widespread attention. Instead of celebrating her for what she brings to the table, the WNBA has allowed identity politics to overshadow her contributions. Kelly's sharp critique made one thing clear: Caitlin Clark isn't just a player under fire, she's a litmus test for how the league handles its brightest stars in the face of divisive cultural pressures. Megyn Kelly's defense of Caitlin Clark didn't just highlight the personal attacks and racial undertones, it also exposed the deeper cultural and economic hypocrisies at play in the WNBA. Kelly argued that the league's survival hinges on players like Clark, yet it fails to protect or properly elevate her. The WNBA relies heavily on the NBA's financial backing, and Clark's games are among the few that consistently sell out arenas and draw significant television viewership. Yet instead of celebrating her ability to bring in revenue and attention, the league has allowed a toxic environment to fester, one where Clark's success is weaponized against her. Kelly pointed out that Clark's achievements have sparked jealousy among certain players who seem more focused on undermining her than improving their own game. This isn't just a Caitlin Clark problem, it's a league-wide issue. When a star player like Clark is bullied and targeted, it sends a message to other potential talents that success in the WNBA might come at too high a personal cost. Kelly argued that this culture of hostility and division is one of the reasons the WNBA struggles to retain viewers and grow its fan base. Instead of fostering competition and excellence, the league seems mired in identity politics and infighting, which alienates both players and fans.
Caitlin Clark was the solution for so many things, but so many players, coaches are also painting her out to be the problem. There was all of this just nonsense about things that Caitlin was doing wrong when, in my personal opinion, she was doing nothing but going out there and playing great basketball every night and ignoring the hate that was coming to her from all sides.
What makes this even more baffling is the stark contrast between Clark's contributions and the behavior of her critics. Kelly highlighted how Clark's presence single-handedly elevates the league's profile, making her the face of WNBA basketball. Fans don't flock to arenas to see the drama or hear political narratives. They come to watch Caitlin Clark do what she does best, dominate on the court. Yet instead of recognizing this, critics like Angel Reese and Aja Wilson appear more interested in tearing her down, often framing her success as a product of racial bias rather than talent. Kelly didn't hold back in calling this out, labeling it as petty and counterproductive, especially in a league that desperately needs stars like Clark to thrive. Kelly also delved into the media's role in amplifying this toxic narrative. She argued that outlets like Time magazine aren't interested in sports or merit, they're invested in pushing political agendas. Naming Clark as Athlete of the Year could have been a celebration of her groundbreaking impact, but instead it became a tool for furthering divisive rhetoric. Kelly accused the media of manipulating Clark into making her controversial statement, suggesting that it was a calculated move to fit a pre-existing narrative. This, she argued, not only hurt Clark, but also reinforced the divisive culture that's holding the WNBA back. But Kelly didn't stop at critiquing the media. She also addressed the broader cultural shift that has taken over sports. She lamented how identity politics have overshadowed the core values of competition and excellence. Kelly compared the current environment to a bygone era when athletes were celebrated for their talent and ability to inspire, regardless of race or background. Figures like Serena Williams and Tiger Woods didn't just break barriers, they brought fans into their respective sports by excelling at the highest level. Kelly argued that Clark has the same potential, but the WNBA and woke media are squandering it by focusing on divisive narratives instead of her undeniable greatness. Finally, Kelly turned her attention to Clark's future. She speculated that the young star might one day regret bending to the pressures of woke culture. Clark's talent and marketability have made her a beacon of hope for the WNBA, but her decision to engage in identity politics risks alienating the very fans who have supported her from the start. Kelly predicted that as Clark matures, she'll likely recognize the importance of staying true to herself and her game, rather than trying to appease critics who will never be satisfied. In the meantime, Kelly made one thing clear: the WNBA and the media need Caitlin Clark far more than she needs them.
One thing Caitlin Clark does maybe better than anybody in sports right now, makes it about others, makes it about team. Think about it. When's the last time you didn't see Caitlin Clark talking about a teammate? When's the last time you saw Caitlin Clark talking about herself or any of the accomplishments that she has had? Let me give you the answer to that. Never. Never. You never hear that. Now, that's why their team has gotten good. She could have been an egomaniac. Everybody in the league knows that she is the league.
Caitlin Clark's story isn't just about basketball, it's a reflection of broader cultural tensions, identity politics, and the power of merit to transcend divisive narratives. Through all the noise, one truth remains unshakable. Clark is a generational talent who has redefined the WNBA. She's not just a player, she's a phenomenon who has brought unprecedented attention and excitement to a league that has long struggled to capture the public's interest. And yet, instead of celebrating her contributions, some players, critics, and media outlets have chosen to focus on tearing her down. Megyn Kelly's defense of Clark wasn't just about one athlete, it was about standing up for excellence in a world increasingly obsessed with narratives that divide rather than unite. Kelly called out the hypocrisy of a league that relies on Clark's star power for survival, but allows her to be vilified by her peers and the media. She reminded everyone that Clark's success isn't a product of privilege or favoritism. It's the result of hard work, unparalleled skill, and a relentless drive to be the best. For Kelly, Clark isn't just a player under fire. She's a symbol of what happens when talent and politics collide. But the real question is, what happens next? Clark has already proven that she can rise above the hostility and perform under immense pressure. The WNBA and its critics may try to overshadow her achievements with divisive rhetoric, but the fans have spoken loud and clear. They show up for Caitlin Clark, they tune in for Caitlin Clark, and they rally behind Caitlin Clark because she represents everything they love about sports: competition, excellence, and inspiration. The league's future may very well depend on whether it chooses to embrace her as its leading star or continue down a path of division. The media's role in this saga cannot be ignored. Outlets like Time magazine had the opportunity to highlight Clark's groundbreaking impact, but instead they used her as a pawn in a larger cultural game. Kelly's critique wasn't just about Clark's statement, it was about how the media manipulates athletes into serving political agendas, often at the expense of their authenticity and fan base. Clark's acknowledgement of white privilege may have been intended as a gesture of goodwill, but it became a tool for critics to further undermine her. The lesson here is clear: athletes like Clark should focus on their game, not the noise around it. In the end, Caitlin Clark's legacy will be defined not by the controversies, but by her ability to rise above them. She's already proven that she has what it takes to lead the WNBA into a new era, and her fans aren't going anywhere. As for the critics, Kelly's message was simple: no amount of bullying or divisive rhetoric can erase Clark's impact. Her story is one of resilience, excellence, and the power of talent to cut through even the loudest of distractions. Whether the WNBA chooses to stand with her or against her, Caitlin Clark will continue to shine, and the league would be wise to recognize the star they have before it's too late. This is bigger than basketball. It's a battle for what the sport represents. Caitlin Clark isn't just saving the WNBA, she's redefining it, and as long as she keeps dominating on the court, no amount of criticism or controversy will ever dim her light. The question now is whether the league and the media will finally get out of her way and let her greatness take center stage.